Hey, welcome back. So if you've been watching any of my videos, you'll have noticed there's a general trend that I've been talking about, which is the inclusion of Rust into the JavaScript and TypeScript ecosystem. So more and more we are seeing the native tools that we use in JavaScript and TypeScript being rewritten in Rust. So we're seeing that with things like Dino, and we're seeing it things like Turbo or TurboPack, but it's not going to stop there, right? It's going to go and extend into things like libraries that we utilize and how we call that from JavaScript. Now, today I'm going to be talking about another tool that has been rewritten in Rust, and that is a tool called Rome. Now, if you've never heard of Rome before, that's okay. It's fairly new. In fact, Rome version 10 has just came out a few weeks ago, and Rome is essentially there to replace your linter and formatter. So if you're using JavaScript today, you're probably using something like Prettier for formatting. You're probably using eslint for your linter. Now, Rome aims to replace that, both for JavaScript and TypeScript. I mean, it's very, very early, but I've been using it for the last few weeks, and I have to say the results are absolutely outstanding. It is super fast. It's not getting in the way of things. And in fact, if you look at a website, it's something like 20 times faster or something like that. And we'll do a benchmark at the end of this. But what I'm going to show you in this video is how you can get started with Rome and how you can start even utilizing that today. Now, of course, it's not going to work for all scenarios, things like plugins and stuff, and haven't been developed. But again, you can always use that sideways with existing tools anyway where you need to use those plugins. But I've been using it, and I've been having a fantastic development experience with Rome. So with that, let's get started. So if you've never used Rome before, you can go to the website, which is rome.tools. And it's got a pretty good introduction. It's a pretty decent website. It's very clear about what it does there. You can see that Rome is a unified formatter and linter. But actually, if you look here, they've got plans for the future as well. They're starting with formatting and linting, but they want to move into compilation, bundling, and testing. And of course, there's going to be a lot of competition in that space. You've got things like Turbo, you've got ESBuild, etc. So, how far they get with that, I don't know. But actually, for the core functionality they provide, formatting, linting, works really well with those existing tools, as I'm going to say. So I think it's pretty good. It's a pretty good website. It's got some good introductions. You can kind of see the performance there. They're saying, Rome finishes in 0.1 seconds compared to Prettier's 4.3 seconds. Again, we'll run some benchmarks later on, but I'm not going to focus on that too much, because when you start to use it, you're going to understand how good it really feels to use. So let's close that down. And what we will do is we'll just start building a website. So you can use it with front-end development, so you can use it with React, and you can also use it with back-end Node.js. But we're going to build a kind of front-end React app just now. So I'm going to use vite. So to get started, I'm just going to type yarn create vite. So we'll just have a sort of out-of-the-box vite package. So we will call this one Rome play vite. And we'll say this is going to be a React, and then we're going to use TypeScript, and then we're up and running. So if I just cd into there, and then we will just do we'll call yarn install. And now that yarn's installed, if we want to just check our default yarn website is up and running, we can just click here, and you can see there you go, vite plus React. So it's a simple out of the box kind of boilerplate for vite. So if I want to include Rome, it's really simple. All I need to do is do a yarn add. I'm going to say it's a developer dependency, and then I just type in Rome. So it's very, very simple. All you need to do is remember the name Rome. So if I want to see that Rome's properly installed, I can just type in yarn rome -- version, and then it's going to come back and it's saying I'm running Rome CLI version 10, which is the one that was released a couple of weeks ago. So all good. Next thing I want to do is be able to just initialize it and get Rome part of my workflow. So to do that, I just type in yarn rome init. That'll take a second, and you can see what it's going to do is actually install a JSON file into my editor. So if I just do a code dot there for a second, we'll make this a little bit bigger. And you can see there in my project, I've now got a Rome file. And you see it's got linting enabled, rules and recommendation. So let's start with formatting. So let me just clear that for a second. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a yarn rome format dot. And that is as simple as it is. If I want to check formatting, once I've done my install of Rome and then I've done my yarn Rome in it, to check formatting, I just run yarn run format. And then you can see straight away it's going to come back with a whole load of stuff there. And the first thing that I'm going to say there for a second is by default, and this is where everybody's going to be like, you know, is that it's by default uses tab formatting, so rather than spaces. So again, a lot of people will go, I don't like that, whatever. Again, that's up to you, right? It's very easy to change that, and I'll show you how we can change that in a second. So you can have whatever indentation, whether you can use tabs or spaces, you know, you can configure all of that. But you can kind of see there straight away, it came back because out of the box for B, you know, I'm using a different kind of formatting side of things. Other things you can see there is quite opinionated, as it's thinking that it wants to use double quotes over single quotes. So if I come back into Visual Studio Code, and if I go into my main.tsx, you can see single quotes there. You know, it's wanting consistency with double quotes. That's sort of fine. You can see it's arguing about the spacing versus tabs. And then probably the last thing I want you to point out there, again, it's sort of enforcing things like semicolon, termination, etc. So as you can see there, by default, Rome format is just going to give me all of the issues that it sees, but it's not going to actually make the changes. If I want to make the changes, all I need to do is type in yarn Rome format --write, and then dot, say go to change all the files, and then it'll take a few seconds, 0.33 seconds, and then it's kind of done. So now I can check it again by typing in yarn Rome format dot, and then you can see there that it's got no errors. And if I come back into Visual Studio Code, we open up main.tsx again, you can see it's made all the changes that it wants. So I think that's a pretty good experience, actually. So you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, that's pretty good so far, but what about things like VSCode extensions, etc.? So what we can do is let's come back into Visual Studio Code for a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up extensions. So we'll just type extensions. I'm going to go to Rome. So there's an extension called Rome there. We'll just hit install. It'll take a few seconds. That will be installed. We'll close that down, we'll reopen again, and then we should have that. So now that I've restarted that, one of the things I want to be able to do is change my formatter. So if I go to format document width, you can see prettier is currently my default formatter, but if I just configure default formatter, and I'm going to set that to Rome. So now that Rome is configured as my default formatter, and I also have formatting on save auto enabled as well, what I can then start to do is start making changes. So if I remove that semicolon there, for example, hit save, you can see it comes back. If I change that index.css, let's turn that into single quotes rather than double quotes. I hit save, it comes back to double quotes there. And again, if that setting annoys you, which it might do, then what you can go is preference settings, go to your formatting, and then you see the format on save there. You can get rid of that, and then it will no longer do that behavior. And then probably the next thing that we'll do there is one of my sort of preferences in this is that I like to just fix up my package.json to make things a little bit better. So I prefer having using the format command in there. So what we are going to do is put in rome format dot, and then I'm also going to put in a format fix. And then we will set that to Rome format, and it shouldn't be applied. We'll put right, and we'll get rid of that semicolon. And therefore, now that that's enabled, if I want to run formatting, I can do yarn format. And then if I want to fix something, so let's go back to my TSX, I'm going to remove. I'm going to just put this back to being a single quote. If I now run yarn format again, you see it's come back with the issue that it sees there. But if I want to fix that now, I can just do yarn format fix. So nice little shortcut, run yarn format, and then we're sort of back good to go. So there's probably enough of you shuddering at the tab indentation that has been occurring throughout my code at the moment. So what we're going to do is modify the rome.json file so that you can then use space indentation. So to do that, we just add in formatter here. And then we will put some braces in. And what we are going to do here is we'll set enabled is going to be equal to true. And then what I want to do is set the indent style. And I'm going to set that to space. And then what we should also do is we're going to set the indent size to 2. And then the last thing that I'll probably do is set the line width to 80. By default, it is 80, but you know, we can put it to whatever value you want, but I'm going to keep it at 80. So now that I've saved my rome.json file, so now if I come back into my terminal for a second, and if I run yarn format, what you're going to see there is going to have a whole load of issues because now it wants to get rid of all the tabs that I introduced and it wants it to bring it back to spaces. So now if I just do yarn format fix, and then we'll just clear that and we will now do a yarn format again, you will see that it has all been fixed. And then if I come back into my editor there, you can see it's all nicely following spaces with 2 spaces rather than tab indentation. So everybody here who's been having a bit of a panic can all just chill out for a little while because life is now pretty good for them. The next problem that you're going to get into is there's going to be a set of files that you want to ignore as well. So we can prove that. If we do a yarn build for a second, it's going to go and create ourselves a nice little dist folder. But then if you see, if I now run yarn format, it's going to go crazy because it's now looking through my dist folder. And I really kind of don't want that to do that. So what we need to do is configure our code so that it can ignore files in the dist folder. So what I am going to do here is I'm just going to extend this out. I'm going to add in an ignore tab here. And then we will have a nice little array there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in node modules. So we'll put node modules star. Now, I could put this to .js, I could put it to a .ts, etc. But actually, I just really want to ignore everything. So we will do that. I'm probably going to want to ignore anything in the .yarn folder as well. So we'll do the same there. And then I probably want to ignore anything in my dist folder, which is the one we just looked at. So we'll do that as well. We'll save that now. And if I come back to yarn format, and you can see it's done there. So it's now ignoring those files. So that's really the kind of the formatting side of things. And as you can kind of see there, it's fast, right? It's a lot faster than prettier. It feels good. It's not getting in the way of my workflow. I've been running it for a couple of weeks now, and I have to say, I absolutely love it, and I don't think I'm going back, right? There's a few scenarios where you may need to modify things, etc., especially in linting for certain rules. But to be honest, for what I'm doing at the moment, it is absolutely spot on. So, and it opens up another interesting point, actually, and it's one of these things that I really want people to focus on. A lot of people think about what their coding standards are going to be. So, and I think in the past we used to have these sort of coding standard documents, etc. That was a big thing. Honestly, now it's the tools and the configuration that define the standards. And I'm actually finding that I'm caring less about the standards in that sense, whether it's a tab versus a space, as long as everybody agrees on what that's going to be and the tooling is set up correctly, and everybody's got their tooling set up in the same way. And I think that's the kind of the key thing that's starting to become important in my mind. So I'm sure the arguments will still rage on, but honestly, as long as the tooling is set up, that's kind of where my mindset is at the moment. So Now that we've done formatting, what we want to be able to do is move on to linting. So one of the things I'm going to do just before we get on to linting is I'm going to extend out the linter configuration for a second there, just to include the ignore files, because I don't want to go back through that again. And I want the linter to ignore the exact same files as I asked the formatter to ignore as well. So, okay, so now that we've configured that, what we want to do is do a linting check in the same way as we did a formatting check. So to do that, I just need to type in yarn rome check dot. Okay, so you can see it's complaining about a few things there. And the first rule you're seeing there is it's avoid using target blank without rel no refer. And you saw that earlier when we were looking at vscode. It actually fired up in the code base. So let's just come back into app.tsx, and you can kind of see there, I target there, avoid using target blank without rel no refer, and you see it's coming from Room. So it's really nice that I can run it on my CLI, but then extension is working pretty well there. So I could go and type stuff in VS Code to fix that, but as you can kind of see, it's coming back and saying these things are fixable. So we will use the tool to do that. So the first thing I can do there is, if I want to fix things, I can just type in yarn rome check -- apply dot, and what that's basically saying there, fix anything that you think is really safe to fix, just go ahead and do that. If you think it's nice and safe and fixable, go ahead and do that. So if I run that for a second, it's going to come back, and then it will have done any changes that it could. So let's run my yarn rome check again, and you can see it's automatically fixed that. So here is a fix that, as far as it's concerned, is a really safe fix for us to do. So, and it's automatically just added that in. And again, if I just remove it again and do a save, it's going to come back with the error, and then I apply the fix again, and then it's good, and we come back here and it's back again. So okay, so as you probably guessed already, I really hate typing in all of that stuff. So I'm just going to add in a nice little lint. So what we're going to do is put in rome check dot there, and then I'm going to add in a lint fix. Okay, so now that that's done, we can come back into our code. So in fact, we can make the same change that we did before. So let's get rid of the rel no refer, save that. Now, if I clear that, we can do a yarn lint, and you can see it's came back with that same error, and now I can run yarn lint fix, and then automatically it's done, and I can do a yarn lint again. So again, just makes it a little bit easier. It means you don't need to remember the commands. So it's one of the things that I've been doing, is just setting that up all the time. Okay, so now that we've got that running, we can mess with it a little bit more. So let's click on the main TSX for a second, and you see we've got app there like that, which is self-closes. So I'm just gonna expand that out a little bit, and you can see it's gonna come back with this error, JSX without children should be marked as self-closing, blah, 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 blah. So if I save that, now, if I do my yarn lint, you can see it's came back with that as an error. But let's do a yarn lint fix. And you can see it's saying skipped one suggested fixes. So it won't fix absolutely everything. There are certain things it decides that it will only do if it's a suggested fix. So you have to explicitly say, apply those suggested fixes. So what we're going to do is we're going to take here, you can see this, use the command rome check apply suggested. So what we're going to do is going to come back into our package.json file. I'm going to add in a lint fix suggested. And then we will just put in that command that it just gave us. So we will save that. And now if I do a yarn lint fix suggested, I missed the dot, obviously. So we'll just add that in there. We'll run that again. And then you can see it's now done that. So if I clear this and we do yarn lint, you can see that error has now been fixed. So let's add a console.log for a second. So let's maybe, rather than using our normal quotes, maybe if I use template literal quotes there, but this time we won't add anything to be replaced. So we'll just do that. You can see it's coming back with an error. Do not use template literals if interpolation, special character handling are not needed. So you can guess what's going to happen here. I'll do yarn lint, and then it's going to come back with that error. It's going to do what the suggested fix is. So if I do a yarn lint fix suggested, and then we do the lint again, you can see it's all good. But maybe I want to ignore it, right? So let's put the template literals back in. It's going to come back with an error. So if we want to ignore it, all we need to do is just type in rome ignore lint, and then we can put an explanation. So I can say I am a douchebag. We'll save that, and I can run yarn lint again, and then you can see it's going to work. And then if I get rid of this, my errors are back both in my vscode and in the linter. So we can save that, and then we're good. Now, of course, if we come back to the rome.tools website for a second, there is a pretty good doc section. So if I just click on documentation, and we go down to something like lint rules there, I mean, yeah, there's a whole explanations on the configuration, so I can decide which rules I want to switch on. I don't need to use the comments. I can decide which rules I want to switch on, what I want to switch off there. So I can just go through that. So here, if we click on lint rules, it gives you a big list of all the lint rules that you've got out of the box there. So there's quite a lot there. Feel free to kind of go through that in your own time. And then I think it's all extendable as well. So if you want to create your own rules, you can do that. And then, of course, you know, if they're good rules, then go contribute back into their GitHub, right? It's an open source project after all. So anyway, I think it's pretty good. I'm going to run a benchmark really quickly, though. I mean, because everybody really always wants me to do benchmarks. I think you're already getting the idea of speed. I probably don't need to do a benchmark. You can probably tell already, anybody that's used eslint or prettier before, you can tell that it's pretty fast. But you know, let's kind of do that. So if we go to github.com/rome, we'll click on that for a second. You've got all the repos there. There's a repo called tools. As you can see, everything's written in Rust. Again, if you're a Rust developer, I know a lot of people on my channel are, you know, it's worth you going through this. There's some really nice code. You might learn some stuff from that. But if you go into benchmark here, you can see they've got a nice little benchmark, and they're using Hyperfine and all that, which is a tool I've used to benchmark a ton of times. And then it shows you how to run that. So we could do that really quickly. So let's just grab this for a second. Let's clear this. We'll come out in here, and what we will do is we'll do a git clone. We'll clone that into here. Cool, now that that's installed, if we just cd into that, and then we go into benchmark, and I'll quickly do a yarn install. Now, if I just run their node run.js, that should do the benchmark. All right, so as you can see, it's kind of done there. It's not going to be the perfect test in this particular case. And the reason it's not going to be the perfect test is that, you know, I'm doing recordings and stuff like that on my machine at this point, because I'm obviously doing a screen recording. But let's kind of look at that. You can kind of see that off the bat there, Rome is running quite a bit faster. So it's only a little bit faster than dprint. I don't think I've ever used dprint before, so I might check that out kind of later on. But as you can kind of see there, it's running substantially faster than prettier, so it's something like 25 times faster, maybe 22 times if you're running it parallel version. But you know, as a kind of sort of rule of thumb, it's about 20 times faster there. And then if we look at it from a linting perspective against eslint, it's sort of reckoning that if we come to the summary there, it's sort of 18 times faster here, maybe 15 times faster than eslint. So kind of regardless, what you're seeing is a substantial difference in the performance between Rome and prettier and Rome and eslint. And you would expect that, right? Because it's, you know, Rome is written in Rust, so therefore it's going to be super fast because there's written in kind of native code there. And they've obviously spent a lot of time on performance optimization. So I'm not surprised there. I'm not too caring about the numbers, and I'm not going to go into the how the tests are done there. They seem fairly reasonable, and to be honest, you can feel it when you're using it. If you just use Rome in the standard way that you would use, so prettier or eslint, then you can feel it in its usage, and even when you're using VS Code extensions or when you're running the build. So, and that's kind of what I'm looking for here is that you feel the difference. You shouldn't be worried about this is X times faster than that. If you don't feel the difference, then you shouldn't care about it. And that's kind of covered in like the turbo pack video that I did last week. But anyway, you can see it's fast. I like the direction that it's going. I've been using it now for a couple of weeks. I'd suggest you do the same. There's going to be some cases where you can't use it. There'll be some plugins or whatever that's not supported. There's some rules that you want that's not quite meeting. But in all honesty, there's an opportunity to make it better, right? And actually start contributing back to the community and the ecosystem. I like where they're going with it. I mean, in the future, where they're talking about things like bundling and all that sort of thing, are we likely to lean into this? I don't know. Maybe formatting and linting will be as far as we go, because do we need everything to be used across the ecosystem? But then if they've done a great job in the same way as they have with formatting and linting, then again, it could be interesting what they do in the future as well. So anyway, I have to admit, really loving it. I think you should get using it. I know it's still very early as a tool. There's a lot of things they need to do, but it's working for me already. I'm sure you're going to find problems with it, and that's fine. Either contribute back or don't use the tool, and I think that's okay. But I'm enjoying it, and I like the direction it's going in, and it's making my workflow a little bit easier. Anyway, I hope this video has been useful, and yes, it's yet another instance of Rust kind of coming into the JavaScript and TypeScript ecosystem, and it means our tools are getting faster. So love it, right? Anyway, speak soon and catch you on the next video. Cheers.